Hi there, everyone. We will just give a couple more minutes. We've got a couple more people coming in. Maybe a minute. Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining. We're going to go ahead and get started. I'm Alan Carr with Visit Kansas City, Kansas, and I'm co-chairing the Mayor's World Cup Readiness Taskforce. First, to start, we'll go around the room, just introduce who's in the room and then who's online. Start over with Greg.
Greg Kindle with the Wyandotte Economic Development Council and with the Business and Workforce Group.
Shane Turner, Assistant Chief with the Kansas City, Kansas Police Department.
I'm David Johnston, the co-chair of this group, also Wyandotte County's representative on the KC 26 Regional Committee and the county administrator.
Francisco Litardo, Kansas City, Kansas Public Schools.
All right, and I know we have a couple folks online. I'll start with Representative Curtis.
Good afternoon. This is Representative Pam Curtis from my office in Topeka at the Capitol. I just happened to have my committee not meet and was able to jump on today. So good to join you guys.
And then I see Megan.
Hi, Megan Gilliland, Economic Development Manager for the City of Bonner Springs.
Hello, Linda Hoskins Sutton on the Task Force Committee. As I will add, can you all hear me? Can you hear me? Alan, can you all hear me?
Linda, I can hear you. This is Pam.
Okay, because all I was, I was
I don't know if,
sharing.
I don't know if the people in the room can hear us though.
Oh, okay.
She's frozen.
Oh, all right. I was sharing that I hadn't, and sent an email to Alan this morning that I had intended to be there in person, but my granddaughter was sick, and my son and my daughter in marriage asked me to keep her. So I'm at home, and I said I may not be able to be really engaged today, but I would at least try to get on. So you think it froze?
Yes, it seems like the screen where they're all frozen.
Oh, okay.
So I don't know that they're hearing us.
And you can with
Mhm.
the grands today, I'm not presentable to be on camera, so I am not turning that camera on.
Gotcha.
Can you hear us?
Yes,
Oh, you can.
we can hear you now.
The video is frozen. Is that what you said? Video is frozen.
Yeah.
Okay, so can you all hear me?
We can hear
Yes.
you. You're
All
just
right, great.
Okay.
So, sorry, I don't know if you heard the start of the meeting. So for our KC 2026 updates, we have two things to update on. First, we expect to have a representative from KC 2026 at our next meeting on March 13th. So mark that on your calendars. Secondly, the transportation group has been meeting of KC 2026, and they did release in their January update some potential locations for park and ride locations around the metro area, which does include one location in Wyandotte County out west, somewhere around 435 and I-70, likely in the Village West area. So that is preliminary at this point, but something for us to keep an eye on, as that may be a location regionally that is used to direct visitors, to pick up visitors to go down to the Fan Fest as well as to Arrowhead Stadium for the matches. The other update is that there's a survey live that KC 2026 has asking for folks throughout the region to submit any events that they're planning during the World Cup to help plan some of their transportation needs. They have agreed to share that list of Wyandotte County, anyone from Wyandotte County that responds with us here on this task force. So that was one of our to-dos, was to start collecting any events taking place in Wyandotte County, but we'll instead use the survey that they have. So we'll be sending out and through our committee as well as through the UG's channels, links to that. And we'd encourage you to share that with any organizations, neighborhood groups, et cetera, here in Wyandotte County, so they can submit their events into that survey. County Administrator, anything else from KC 2026?
Nope.
All right. Any questions there from anyone? We did have, I'll stop. We had two other folks join us. I'll let them introduce themselves. Make sure you turn your mic on.
Good afternoon, everyone. This is Fabiola Riobe with Kansas City, Kansas Community College.
And I'm Israel Mendez from El Poblito and the Hispanic Chamber of Commerce.
Thanks for being here. All right, and we had one other person join online, Raul.
Yes, Raul Villegas with Soccer Nation KC.
All right, thanks for being here.
Okay.
So next, we'll get into our work group updates. Our work groups, we have our 4 work groups. They've been very active in meeting and coming up with the recommendations that will form the basis of our report. We have had a lot of information, I think, that's been gone over. I'm sure there's a lot more that we can be considering, but we will start with the updates. I will start with the marketing work group that I am heading up. We have had a couple meetings, and I'm working to get the next meeting scheduled. We essentially have kind of 4 areas that we're really looking at to provide recommendations on in the marketing area. The first is promotion and advertising, and this is working on some tools that we would want to use to promote Wyandotte County to visitors. So this would be things like what sort of website or web portal should a visitor go to learn about what they can do while they're here for the World Cup? Do we want to develop an app? What kind of collateral pieces would we need? Social media presence, all of those things. So we'll be providing some recommendations for all of that as part of this report. The other thing we talked about was asset promotion. What are the things that we want to promote here in Wyandotte County, or that we should be promoting here in Wyandotte County? And so we will be collecting a list of story ideas and areas that we really want to focus on in terms of getting that information in the hands of a visitor, both with events and special activities going on, but as well as the history and the heritage and the food and the shopping opportunities that take place here in Wyandotte County. The second area that we talked about was branding and storytelling, and how do we kind of create a cohesive narrative for Wyandotte County that we can introduce these visitors that will be in our region to the experience and the history that they can have here. I think one of the things we spent a lot of time discussing was potentially the need to develop a sort of a community brand or logo that we could use here in Wyandotte County, because we know that there will be restrictions on using any kind of official FIFA marks or even any kind of KC 2026 marks unless it's an official event taking place. So that's something that we are going to be exploring and likely taking on at Visit Kansas City, Kansas, is working on some sort of a logo identity that can be used with organizations throughout the community during the summer of 2026. Our goal there will be to get that developed by the third quarter of this year, so there'll be time to get that out and have people start adopting that. So stay tuned for more information on that. The third area, or the last area that we really focused on, and this really encompasses a lot of the work groups I think have had discussion in this area, is special events and what kind of events will take place here in Wyandotte County. And we've essentially separated these into a couple different categories. The first would be those official events that are part of the World Cup. We do know that we right now have 2 locations that could host those events. One being Children's Mercy Park, which could be a training site for the teams that are coming in to compete and have matches here in Kansas City. The second would be Compass Minerals Performance Training Center, which is a potential location for a base camp. So while we would have no official role in planning those events, we do want to make sure that we have all of our ducks in a row and can do all we can to maximize that opportunity should those 2 locations land here in the county. The second area that we had a lot of discussion on, and I know this has come up in a few of the other work groups as well, is watch parties. I think this is an area where there's a lot of interest for any of the matches taking place during the World Cup. We do know from some of the guidance we've gotten from KC 2026 that there are some restrictions and will be some rules in place for who can show matches. There will potentially could be some licensing requirements. I think what we've heard is that those rules are still being put in place, so that has not been released yet from KC 2026. What we have heard is if you are a bar or restaurant that has TVs and typically shows games, you should not be impacted and you can continue doing what you're doing. If you're a larger venue that wants to host a specific event, depending on whether it's a paid event or you're a nonprofit organization and how large the event, there may be some licensing fee costs to that. So once we get that guidance, we will pass that on to everyone as part of our communications. But we want to also work on how we can kind of track and make sure we have a good list of locations that are planning to do things. We know probably one major event that will take place, we've already heard from, is at St. John's, where they always are cheering on Croatia anytime they're playing. And we know that they are planning for some major events anytime Croatia has a match in the Strawberry Hill area. So those kind of events are things that we'll be adding to our list here. The third area that there has also been a lot of discussion on is what we're calling community activations. And so these would be special events taking place to attract visitors here in Kansas City, Kansas. So this could be something that's a one-off created just for this event, or it could be one of our attractions hosting events. We've heard, I know there were some meetings yesterday around with Quindaro and the Quindaro ruins, and I know they have a desire to activate their space during this period. We've also heard from a number of other locations that have an interest in putting on special events. So we will be gathering that list and putting together some recommendations around that. I think with all of these and with all of these things, we know one of the top concerns is funding, and where will the funding come from? That is a little bit of an unknown at this point. But I think one of the recommendations that we would like to consider putting into the report is asking for an allocation of grants that could be awarded to local organizations to help put on some of their activities during this period. That is all that I have from the marketing work group. Any questions on any of that?
Alan, this is Greg with the Economic Development Council. Just a question on the local brand. So as you know, during the business outreach task force meeting, we had some conversation about printing items and how those things could be sold at the local level. I think one of the questions that came up after that meeting was, is the local brand that we come up with going to be free for businesses to sort of print and put on tchotchkes, or is that something that's going to be sort of licensed to Visit KCK or the unified government and would be sold, much like FIFA or any of the others, where I would license it? I don't know that we have to have an answer today, but it is something to consider about whether that is a free, what will ultimately be a free thing, right? Somebody like you all would probably have to pay to have the brand created, but then it's a question of, are we selling that visual element, or are we going to give it away to businesses for free?
Yeah, that's something that hasn't specifically been discussed in detail in the marketing work group. Although I think just in the discussion that has taken place, I think the thought was this would be something that would be free, and anyone in Wyandotte County that wanted to kind of help build on this excitement would be able to participate in. But that's something we can certainly take a look at. All right, any other questions on marketing? All right, I will go to Representative Curtis, if you're available, if you want to give us an update from the on-site experience group.
Sure, I can. Actually, we have not met since I have been in session, and we kind of did our final report at the end of the year. But I can update you on a couple of things. We did have an update here in the Ag and Natural Resource Budget Committee from the World Cup. And a lot of the questions that we had asked before, just as far as getting us ready to be a host community. And I really focused on the downtown area because so much attention is being paid out west. And I'm real concerned with all of the infrastructure challenges that we have downtown. just how this is going to work and what we need to do to get ready. So I brought up one that I asked the World Cup Committee of the KC26 to meet with the Strawberry Hill group, made an introduction to Rose Ielts, who could pull together a group of businesses there that will be impacted, as well as some of the venues. But also brought up things such as, are there going to be extra porta potties? Is there going to be a park and ride downtown? Are they going to have any support available as far as like helping with signage on how people can get around with all the challenges downtown? So I don't know if Rose has heard back from Lindsay from the KC26 committee to set up that meeting, but hopefully that can happen soon, just so that they can figure out, you know, what needs to be done ahead of time and what support they can bring. You know, I keep hearing about these federal dollars. So, and, you know, that was one of the questions that I asked in the committee is just, you know, we know that there's been some state funds allocated. We know that there's some private fundraising going on. We know that there's some federal funds that are being sought after. How do we access those funds? And then the other question that I brought up, which I did get an answer from the presenter, was on these additional events and the cost that the community may incur. So say if our police and fire are part of the response team with KC26 and we have another major event, but we then have to go outside our community to hire those additional resources, who's going to pay for that? And they said that they would be, actually KC26 would be responsible for paying a lot of those costs. So I followed up with that to ask, you know, how indeed that happens. That was a little less clear, but they did indeed commit that they would be helping the community with some of those costs. One last thing is that there is another World Cup briefing this Thursday in our appropriations committee. So if there's any outstanding questions or issues that you want me to bring up, please let me know, because I'd be happy to bring those up if it's helpful. And I think that's all I have to add. If you have any questions, just let me know. Thanks.
Any questions for Pam?
I just say, you know, from the business task force, they had inquired about if there's going to be signage. So for, you know, say draping the Memorial Hall, or we're doing specific signage. I think the request from that business community, which was, you know, almost entirely Wyandotte County businesses, was that those things be printed or produced from Wyandotte County businesses. And of course, the question was, you know, who's paying for that signage? And so I appreciate you bringing that up, Pam. But I also wanted to note that you know, we were trying to back into timelines, like how long does it take once you get the artwork and we know what is actually going to, you know, need to have signage? Well, how long do they need to get those things printed and backing into it? It seems like they can do it at a fairly quick turnaround time. But there was some discussion about, hey, if we're going to have 2 or 3, you know, defined locations, then, you know, let's make sure that those are all signed well and look really, really nice. But again, I just kind of wanted to be, you know, share that the business sector was like, hey, we want those things to be produced in Wyandotte County if at all possible, and we don't disagree with that. But the sooner that we have all that, the better.
Yeah, I know one of the recommendations from the report that group is looking into is also street pole banners. And one of the first actions is to get an inventory of how many poles there are that actually have the hardware that could install banners. So there's some things like that are in the works and will be detailed in the report. Any other questions for this group?
Well, I have a question, because that's very interesting, because you mentioned that the poles have the hardware. So how will we get to know about that, or how will we get notified? Do we put like the artwork goes with the marketing and we're allowed to use our FIFA signs, or are we gonna get sued by FIFA? What steps are we gonna take to prevent that from happening?
Well, yeah, so typically, I believe the street pole banners are under the control of specific neighborhoods and neighborhood groups that have control of those. So we would work through a process. I think what we're recommending is first get an inventory of knowing how many we have and who controls them. And then that would be something that we could provide to KC 2026.
Well, I just want to, I'm sorry to interrupt, I just want to assist the community. I don't want to like hinder them, but like, giving them some material, then they get in trouble with FIFA. That's a big, outfit, you don't want to, make them angry.
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the recommendations I think from another group is to put together a sort of a toolkit that
Okay.
we can, I think this maybe Greg's group, to give out to local businesses, especially around licensing and uses of, logos and marks, to make sure that everyone is staying compliant.
And I want to volunteer to help that. So if we get my contact information, I just want to assist the community, make sure that we're on the up and up on everything on that. I want to kind of oversee that for us. Thank you.
All right, anything else from this work group? All right, I will move, Linda, are you available to give an update on the neighborhoods work group?
Yes, hello everyone. And I think the screen had frozen when I was trying to say that I had intended to be there in person. And as I had shared with you earlier, that my granddaughter, 4-year-old, got sick. And so I'm keeping her today. So I may not be as engaged and I may have to get off, but I will start a little bit here. Our group, which is the neighborhoods and residents, we met on January 23rd, and what we started doing was pulling our information together to go into this form that Alan has put together so that when he does submit the report to the mayor and the commissioners, that it will be a report that's streamlined and is consistent in the way it's delivered. But so when we started putting the things into groups, we were talking about the neighborhoods, participation and events. So we talked about the feasibility of members of the community actually going to the World Cup. One of our biggest areas, though, was the neighborhood. So we are connecting with livable neighborhoods, and I will attend their meeting on this coming Thursday just to talk about it a little bit more. One of the things that David Johnston had mentioned to us when we met the last time was maybe come with some type of budget, and that's what we're going to budget suggestion. That's what we're going to do the next time. For example, there can be special events, watch parties, cultural events, soccer events, but there's a suggestion that if we don't already have some type of dollar amount attached to it, that could be difficult when we get closer to things starting to happen. So we're going, for the purpose of the UG, we are going to suggest some amounts, maybe 6 or 7 cultural parties, neighborhood parties at 5,000 to 6,000 each. But we're not going to just give it away. There will be a form where groups will have to complete in order to compete, I guess is not the right word, but to get this form. And then the other part that we're going to be working on is the trash pickup. And we're going to be working with John Kelly, that's there with the UG in building and logistics, cleanup. And we don't want this to be just a one time. We want it to be an incentive for neighborhoods to continue to clean up. Then I'll move on to the next thing that we talked about was the soccer development. And I think Francisco is there, and we've just got to connect with him again. He has been very busy and has not been able to meet with us as much. But we did have the people from the Kansas State School for the Blind there, and so we are going to have a campus blind soccer simulation and demonstration so that the community can see that. I think USD 500 has Banneker as a mini pitch, and we're going to connect with the with PAL, Police Athletic League, for soccer participation. So that's just some of the things that we're going to be working on to get into this form. Then our other part was housing and short-term rental. And I think with that, we're just going to have to make recommendations that the UG use the resources we already have, because I don't think they're going to be able to shorten the term, but for getting those things done. But we're going to kind of leave that in their hands. And then when it comes to residents' impact, code enforcement, traffic, we know that we will have to be, we will list that the sheriff's office, the police, all of those areas, and probably will need some assistance, probably all across the metro. These groups will have to work together for the impact on the traffic. So that's just some of the things that we're working on. And we are meeting again, this group, neighborhood group, we're meeting this coming Thursday, the 27th at 11:30. And we hope to fill this form in more so that we can have it ready for when Alan tries to put this all together by what, April 1st? So that's all I have at this time. Are there any questions for me?
The meeting again held at 11:30 on the 27th. What's the location?
What's Alan? Oh, 755 Minnesota. If you want to come in.
755 Minnesota?
757. Yes. Yeah. It's Alan's office. Visit KCK. Is that the name of it? Am I saying it correctly, Alan?
That's correct.
Yes. And one more thing, as our committee is growing, I know we're close to the end, but we're welcoming anyone who still wants to join us, because we can still use ideas to submit in this report. And I think more than anything, when we talk about the neighborhood groups, we have to, and I will make this clear on Thursday, is we're taking the input, we're passing it on. We're not saying that, oh yes, your group can do this and what have you, because we're making recommendations. We're not actually saying what's going to happen. We are making recommendations. So that concludes the report. Are there any questions?
Linda, thanks for your report. This is Francisco. I apologize for not attending the latest.
Oh, I understand. Yes.
I attended most of the meetings till
Yes.
the beginning of the year, and then my lobbying activities in Topeka have just been absorbing all my time. But I will say that we have had a series of conversations with various stakeholders at the district to try to spark some interest in what some of these ideas might turn into that we've already discussed in this group. And we're
Yes.
still struggling with that. So it's not dead in the water, but just something that hasn't yet blossomed into something that we can commit to as a proposal. But there is a meeting that I'm having next week with our director of the KCKPS Foundation, understanding that funding is always an issue to get anything started. I'm not promising that anything will be sprouting out of that meeting, but I will hold it with our leaders, inform them of what this group is doing, what the subgroup is doing. And then maybe by the time this report is due, we can have something from USD 500 that's a little bit more of a commitment. So that's basically the status. And again, I apologize for the rest of the other groups attending the meeting that I haven't been able to attend. I won't be at Thursday meetings because I'll be in DC with another federal lobbying this time. But I will try to catch up between now and Thursday with you, Linda, if you don't mind, and then or after the meeting to just sort of check signals.
Yes, and I was hoping to be there, and I was going to talk with you because I have not had a chance to return your call. Well, I was going to ask you. I'll ask you when we talk after this meeting then. Okay, but thank you for that input. Any other questions?
Yes, Linda, this is Raul from Soccer Nation. How are you?
All right, how are you?
So we've been working in Wyandotte for about 20 years, and we host Soccer Nation tournaments, leagues, camps for youth and also for adults. So if we have a proposition to do an event, does it go through your group or do we go directly to Alan?
It would, soccer is on, is a part of this subgroup. So yes, it would be in this report. Eventually, it is going to go to Alan because he's going to put the whole report together. But when this subgroup is called neighborhoods and neighborhood and residents, and with that, within that, one of the subgroups is youth soccer and soccer development. So
Perfect.
yes, it definitely would live in this part of the report.
Okay, perfect. Then I'll be there on Thursday at 11:30.
Great,
Yes.
great. I'd love to meet and talk with you because that's a big part of it, of this
Yes.
report, is getting soccer started and then have it continue as a legacy in the community. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you. I'll be there on Thursday.
All right.
Any other questions for the neighborhood group? All right, we will move on to our fourth work group, which is the business and workforce development headed up by Greg.
Thanks, Alan. So yeah, Greg with the Wyandotte Economic Development Council, we had a business task force meetings February the 18th. We had 32 folks between in person and online. It was terrible weather, didn't expect anybody to show up, and we had several people in person. So we were not completely prepared for that many people to show up in person, but a phenomenal discussion by rights. We had about an hour and a half or better worth of a conversation. Our next meeting is scheduled for, will be coming out, but it's scheduled for March the 13th so that we can bring some information back to them. Very robust conversation. Dr. Fabiello was there as well. Kind of in a couple of buckets. So one, supply chain. A pretty valid conversation around the idea that these restaurants, food trucks, any small business that is going to really participate in selling things directly to the general public is going to have a pretty substantial ramp up. And so that's not only an issue of do you have people, but it's an issue of just supply chain. Do we have enough cold storage? Do you have enough product on order so that you can actually prepare for the number of folks coming in? That also then tied itself into funding. So there is some conversations underway about how do we get some short-term funding for these small businesses that maybe need to buy more product, buy more food, engaging some of our banks, but also the Kansas Small Business Development Center, the SBA, but probably more importantly for us is probably Network Kansas. So Network Kansas has a program that we already administer called the Empower WICO program. That may be one that we can roll some of this through already structurally and do some short-term small business loans through and get a sort of a one-time additional shot of funding for small businesses. There's usually some criteria, but I think there's some interest there in making that happen because I do think it was a valid conversation item that came up that our small businesses may not have the financial wherewithal to bring all that product in, not to mention where they're going to store it all. So that was one of the big pieces. The other one that's kind of been brought up, but I'll hammer on a little bit more, and that is this business resources, the toolkit. Dr. Fabiola also made mention of that being the intentionality of it, and that, again, we need to find ways to house that information. Right now, we're talking about housing that probably on our site, the chamber site, and the Visit KCK site, with the primary driver being Visit KCK for this purpose. So if a business is looking to find resources during the World Cup, we would put those resources under the World Cup heading in Visit KCK, even if that ultimately ends up being housed with the chamber and the EDC and anybody else who wants it. We have some ideas about how to move that forward, but we also need to make sure that it has language translation. Tico certainly brought that up, as well as a few others that were in the meeting. Having that, again, centralized info. This ties back into a little bit of the workforce side. I thought it was a really great idea, and that is tying the students to mentoring with the businesses, but it's kind of almost mentoring on its head because some of the small businesses that we think might participate may not have a web presence because they may not have the knowledge or the resources to actually do an on-site marketing profile. but those students probably do. And because of the Kauffman Foundation's role with most of our school districts, the community college as well, this could be a really interesting internship, quasi real world learning experience. And this is something we've been trying to toy with and figure out how we tie this program and World Cup into sort of an internship program or something that could be really more meaningful. This could actually be a big part of that, particularly if there's the marketing side connected to the business side of it. Could be very, very interesting. So we now have some new agenda items for the workforce side to go back to the school districts and the community college and Donnelly and say, hey, how do we pull this together so that we could pair students with businesses and do it in a consistent way, right? So we can move it along. And what's the cost to do all of that? And how much that can be offset some fashion or another, whether that's through some other business sponsorship or whatever. But that seems like a meaningful way and something that could be sustainable, right? So we get them online now, they're online forever. And most of us don't do anything without putting the address in our phone. And if there's not a web address, we often walk on by it. So we think that's a long-term sustainable discussion anyway. The other piece of this is we talked about the coordination with Visit KCK, about the website and the app. There's some app discussion about how there may be one in play. Coordinating locations for businesses to directly engage those tourists. This may be somewhat tied to Pam Curtis's group, but there was some discussion, as you recall, Alan, about utilizing the bridges for actual vendor fairs. So we've talked a little bit about having a vendor fair tied to wherever these official locations are. But one of the things that kind of came up as an idea is this idea of having an ongoing vendor fair location, whether that's either here downtown, you block off some streets, or do you do something that maybe calls attention to like Central Avenue Bridge, right? So you're in that same corridor with Slaps and the coffee shop and you got other things going on. You got the backdrop of Kansas City, Missouri. Maybe it brings a little attention to the fact that this is an unfunded bridge project as well. But because it's already an asset, it very well may have parking that could be, looped in, may not be drivable, but that doesn't mean it's not necessarily walkable. And what could that do to creating stations for individual ethnic businesses to participate? So there's probably more conversation around that tied to places rather than it just being business side of it, but it does tie into that idea that I think a lot of our businesses who aren't on those main drags or in the line of normal the events happening, want a location where they could sell their product as well and do it on a more regular basis. And something I think will end up in our report. Let me see if there's anything else other than official branding and the custom items and the printing and the signage, all those kinds of things. And then I guess the other takeaway on the workforce side of it, but also business side, is really getting a really good defined list of restaurants and sites, partly to make sure that it goes on to an app or a website, but two, that's going to be our only really good way of identifying how do we find out how many additional workforce do they need. And so that's going to take a considerable amount of effort to really walk through all of the various restaurants that we have. And I don't know that anybody has a great list. It may be possible to get that from the business licensing group here at the UG. And so we can pare that down to restaurants and then start from there and just make sure we have all that listed and make sure it gets on some sort of app or website. And then some sort of contact information that we can find out what their workforce needs are. I think that's it since we last met.
Any questions for Greg? Comments for workforce and businesses?
Just something that jumped into my mind as Greg spoke here. I know that our group, the residents and residents at one point discussed the short-term rentals dynamic and where that stood today versus what may be needed moving forward. And I think that might have been around the time when I disconnected from some meetings. So is there a report on that? Should we be jumping back to that topic in this neighborhood and residents, or has another subgroup taking that on? Or is the UG in itself kind of handling that? That's my question.
Yeah, so that is part of the discussion with Linda's group in neighborhoods, and that will be part of the report. I think the reality, I think in talking with UG and staff is, this is an area we think there's definitely going to be increased demand. And it's a balance of how much opportunity is there to encourage compliance with the regulations, which could, mean ramping up enforcement or staff versus working to make these opportunities and the licensing requirements known to the public. And the third area, I think, then is also working to protect renters and considering any applications there that the UG may want to do to make sure that people aren't being evicted, so someone can turn the property into short-term rental for a month.
Yes, Francisco, what I think probably this is Linda, the last time you were there, we were trying to see if we could get that process shortened for people who are wanting to rent their space out for soccer fans. And the message, the overall theme that we got back is that they don't have enough staff as it is, and that it probably wouldn't be possible. So that's why I said in the report, what I'm going to put in that area is that this would be, we recommend that the area of the UG that takes care of this will facilitate this, because we will not, they're not going to make any changes. So we're just going to leave it. We're going to turn it over to them. We're going to recommend that the short-term area of UG handle this. And then if anything happens different, it would be them versus us trying to tell them something, because they're already telling us, that they are already inundated. Hope that answers your question.
Yeah, it does. Thank you.
Okay.
Any other questions for the business work group? All right, excellent. So with all of this work, as has been mentioned, we are in the process then of turning these discussions around into recommendations that will go into the report. I had hoped to have a start of that report to share today. I have a start. It's not in a place to share it yet. So the plan going forward will be our last two meetings will be kind of heavy work periods. The plan will be to get you sections of that report in advance of the meeting, so you'll have time to review. And then at the March 13th, our next meeting, we will review sections of the report and recommendations from some of these areas. And then we will finish up with, hopefully if all goes as planned, finish up with that on March 25th. We'll take another section of the report. And if time allows, then hopefully we will get through the whole report and be able to vote on these recommendations to give to the UG. A couple things I think I'll note since we started. So much is still in flux. So much is still unknown from FIFA, from KC 2026 in a lot of areas. And so this report is not shaping up to be a set of final recommendations of what we think is going to happen. It's really looking at what are the questions and the topics we need to consider and think about that we may need to take action on. And so I think that's a lot of this. There are some specific, though, recommendations on things that we think would benefit Wyandotte County in these areas that we've just discussed. And then I would say probably another part of this that's been a big part of this discussion is a lot of big ideas, a lot of great pie in the sky ideas that people have that quite frankly, right now, we don't know where the money or the planning work would come from to do those ideas. So I think some of those we will mention in this report. And if there is someone that wants to champion those and fund those, I think there's some great ideas that have come forward on things that could draw some attention and some visitors during the World Cup. But we don't know who would do that work or fund them at this point. So they're not going to be official recommendations.
I guess, Alan, that's where my concert idea is the big idea.
I guess I'm just going to also, this isn't an end. This is a work in progress. World Cup starts in June of next year. We have still a lot of work to do. This just gets us to a point of starting some of these ideas. And therefore, it gets us moving. And there'll be other ideas to the table that we'll act on to get us to June of 2026. So just because we get to this time of these ideas doesn't mean our work's done. We keep doing the work till we bring the teams will be named in December of this year, January of next year. So then we will know what languages we have to deal with when we deal with wayfinding issues and things like that. So that's another wave where we have to get ourselves together. We do have a group inside of UG to deal with cleanliness and blight removal. So we do know a group of people within the government who we will work with the neighborhoods and our volunteer groups to get ourselves prepared this year to know how we have to clean up our town and practice this year to make it our efforts in earnest next year to make our visitor experience the best next year, that we get our habits to carry us over into 26, 27, and in the future. So we are doing things to get our act together. So we got work and ideas, putting them into practice now. Get ourselves together. Get our kinks worked out. And then when the teams are here and our fans coming in May, June, July, we know what we're doing. So we're just getting ourselves together. So this is just the start. And I think we'll have fun doing it over the next year and a half. Okay? But remember, when we started this, about 6 months ago, we had no idea what we're doing. Think about what we've done in just 6 months. We've come a long way. We've still got a long way to go, but we're a lot further than where we were. So congratulations on that.
Thank you. Yeah, I think from setting in on many of the work groups, I think there certainly feels like there's clarity on what the issues are. We just don't necessarily know maybe how to tackle them at this point, but we're getting there, as the county administrator said. Any other comments, questions about the process, updates from your area on anything World Cup related?
Hey, Alan, this is Pam Curtis. I just want to add, I think it's really important that we prioritize because, with limited resources, we keep hearing over and over, we don't know how we're going to pay for things. Like, we're really going to have to hone in on what we need to prioritize for our community to take advantage. And I think for, in many regards, the western part of our county is going to be well taken care of. There's going to be transportation from sporting and from Compass Minerals. There's going to be park and rides. There's going to be a lot of activity out there. I still remain concerned about the eastern portion of our county being truly prepared and able to take advantage. So I appreciate everybody being all kumbaya and saying that everything's going to be fine, but the time is ticking. And for some of those things, there's a little bit of a ramp up to make them happen. So I just think, I know we have a couple of more meetings, but it's just going to be real important for us to really hone in on what our top priorities are And I'm just assuming that all the government stuff, because that came up in the hearing that we had, but all the government stuff like the interoperability and all of those things are being planned and taken care of. Because, you know, we're more focused on what we need to do to get our community ready. So anyway, that's just my 2 cents. I think that we really need to be strategic and really hone in on our priorities in the next few meetings that we have.
Good. Great comments.
I also appreciate Alan noting that while we're doing this report, that is probably going to continue to evolve, because every time we have a conversation with somebody new, they have another, you know, good idea, or, oh gosh, did you think about that? Or, hey, here's a different take on what you just, you know, proposed. And so I do appreciate the fact that I suspect that there are going to be far more things roll out. The closer and closer we get, I think there'll be, you know, ordinances or policies that suddenly get in our way for one reason or another, that we're going to have to say, hey, guys, we're going to have to be pretty flexible in this. And maybe part of that is to say to, you know, UG, we may just need a World Cup placeholder on public agendas if we have to make some adjustments pretty quickly, because we've had people already say, well, we need to relax RV resort requirements. I don't even know what that looks like or what needs to be relaxed, but I assume that they have some insight that somehow or another our RV resort requirements are tough. I don't know what that means.
And I would love to assist on that bridge. You know, you had the idea of the bridge. And now that she mentioned on the east side, we also have a bridge that is down on Kansas Avenue. And I have a great idea for that bridge. And I think we can probably make some funds to fix that bridge. So I think maybe we could use this maybe like a fundraiser / celebration, you know, since we're having the World Cup.
Good, thank you. Love all the ideas and input. Any other thoughts, comments, questions from anyone? All right, well, we can give you back 30 minutes of meeting time. So as a reminder, we have 2 more meetings scheduled. I think the county administrator said it well. That doesn't necessarily, that means the end of this task force. That's the end of this phase when we issue the report. So you can mark your calendar for March 13th, 1:30 to 3. We will be in this room as well as on Zoom. We expect to have a member of KC 2026 to present kind of where they stand. And then we will start going over the report. I hope to have that out to everyone about a week before that meeting. So it would be about a week from now, the first section of the report. And then March 25th, we will continue reviewing sections of the report. So again, that meeting will be here in this room, 1:30 to 3 with a virtual option via Zoom. Thank you all. We are adjourned.
Thank you.